Before we dive in, a huge shout out to everyone who supported the channel. If you want to support me in making these videos, you should use the new join button. Tier 2 members get exclusive Discord roles, and best of all, you get me and my team helping you out with your projects. So if you're looking for some extra support or just want to say thanks, hit the join button below. Alright, let's get right into it. Welcome back, Skyt here, and today I'm doing a full course on ImGui. Keep in mind that this is for you to understand the general use of ImGui, to understand the elements, some structures, and most of the basic stuff so you know how to work with it. And for more complex designing things, you can check out my channel where you have individual videos on many of these things like loading fonts, loading images, loading GIFs, and so much more. Custom buttons, sliders, checkboxes, so on. So this video is made for you to understand the basics of ImGui, backends, structures, windows, elements, and so on. So be prepared to spend your next 40 minutes at least here, but I do guarantee you, if you do, you will know how to use it, at least on the basic level. So please subscribe, leave a like, and join Discord, because if you need any help, I'm there, my staff is there, and we will help you. So yeah, also join my channel membership if you are feeling generous today. But let's get right into it. The first things we are going to talk about is setting up your Visual Studio. I know this is probably not a hard thing to do, but if you're a new coder and you want to learn about ImGui, this is needed. So the Visual Studio you will download, and keep in mind you have all the links you need in the description. It's Visual Studio 2022. You could also work on ImGui projects on older Visual Studios, but if you have the space for it and time to install the new one, I suggest you get the latest one, 2022, and community is enough. Once you do that, you will have a Visual Studio installer like this, which I will open right now. And it's important because you need to install a few packages and a few additional tool sets, which I'll show you. You will have something like Visual Studio Community 2022, and instead of saying this, you will say install or something like that. I'm going to click modify, you are going to click install, but it will look almost the same. Keep in mind, I have more platforms and more individual components than you need. So make sure to only install what I tell you, not everything you see here. Strictly for working in C++ ImGui, you need in workloads the desktop development with C++, universal Windows platform development, and you will need game development with C++. So these three I think are the only ones, yeah. Game development, desktop development, and universal Windows platform development. These are the three workloads you should select, and after that you should go to individual components. Here you need a few things. First of all, you need an SDK. Simply get the latest one, make sure it's a Windows SDK, and get a Windows 11 SDK or a Windows 10 or both, and simply get the latest version, the biggest number, and that should be enough. So as you can see, I checked here one SDK for Windows 11 and two SDKs for Windows 10. After you do that, we are going to go on build tools. This is very important. I'm using the latest ones, 143. 142 should also do the trick, but I suggest you stick to 143. So what you're going to search for is 143, and you are going to get the MSVC v143 VS 2022 C++ x64 and x86 build tools, the latest version. And also for the same build tools, you will get the C++ ATL for the latest v143 build tools. Again, 86 and 64. So that should do it for now. The ATL for the build tools, and the SDK, and you are going to click install. After everything installs, you do need .NET Framework And installing the 3.5 version, I think we'll also install the 2.0 framework. So let's see. This one, the .NET Framework 3.5, which again, I will leave it to you in the description. I'll leave everything you need in the description. Basically, it will look like this. I don't think it will load since I already have everything installed. But this is the .NET Framework 3.5, which also includes 2.0 and 3.0. And besides this, you need the DirectX of your choice, or if you don't work with the DirectX backend, then you can skip this. But if you do want to work with DirectX, you need the DirectX SDK June 2010, which again you have in the description, the development kit, so this one. But again, in the description, don't worry about that. After you install these things, which are needed, you can go ahead and download ImGui, which the simplest way to do it without Git, without anything, is from their GitHub. So you're gonna search ImGui GitHub, or again in the description. And in their GitHub here, you can go to releases, whichever is the latest. You're gonna see some awesome projects made with this library. And although it looks simple and not so sophisticated at first, the level to which you can customize this is insane. So you can do whatever you want with ImGui, no matter how it looks at the start. So scroll through all of that and find the source code.zip and download it. After it's done downloading, you will drag this into desktop or wherever you want to. So let's wait for that to unpack. Let me close Steam. And I need to blurry this stuff. Alright, so after we've downloaded this ImGui, obviously if you want to include it in another project, which I will show you in a separate video, not now, you will have to include all of these files and the desired backends, which you can also combine. If you want, you can have, by example, today we are working on Win32 with DirectX 11. So you're gonna have a backend for DirectX 11, CPP and H, and for Win32 as well. We're not going to include them in a project today. We're just gonna work on the example you already have. So inside here you have examples, and here you have an ImGui solution to all examples. Now I'm going to delete all of them except the DirectX 11 we are working with, because it will get too messy. And after we only have our DirectX 11, we can open the SLN file, which is the solution file Microsoft Visual Studio 2022 knows to run. When you open that, you will most likely get this error. I mean, definitely get this error that some solutions were not loaded because we deleted them. Don't worry, the DirectX 11 will load, or the platform you choose. And you might get this retarget projects. You will choose the latest SDK version and the latest platform toolset, which will be 143. So you're gonna upgrade to 143 and the latest installed version of your SDK, and you're gonna click OK. From here you can delete all of these solutions which are no longer loading. And if we open sources and main.cpp, we can see the ImGui in all of its glory. Now, I'm going to quickly go ahead the code here, but I will go more in depth in other videos. In int main is where you create the window. This HWND here is the invisible or visible window where ImGui is drawn. It's not the actual ImGui window. It's simply the Win32 window, let's say so. Here we show that window and update the window, and here you start the actual ImGui stuff. You check the version, you create the context, And then you have some flags here, which we'll get to later. You set up the style here with the colors, which we also get in later. And here you start the backends. So Win32 init and DX11 init, because we are on Win32 DirectX 11. Now here is the while loop, the main while loop where everything happens. ImGui is a library which runs every tick. So 25 times a second or whatever. And anyways, it runs every tick. So any instruction you have in ImGui should be placed inside the while. And keep in mind, it will execute many times a second. Here is some registering, getting the messages, getting everything you need for ImGui, which I'm gonna skip on. Here you create the frame, so the frame for DirectX and the frame for Win32 and the ImGui frame. And here is some code which I will delete because I will want to explain it to you. Between new frame and render, you type your whole code. So here goes the window. Everything in your app should stay before render and after new frame. And here it's the rendering, the present, which you can have vsync or without vsync. So you can disable vsync if you want by typing 0 and 0 as arguments here instead of 1 and 0. I'm gonna leave it with vsync because it doesn't really matter now. And if at any point you set done to true, then the whole while loop will stop and the app will shut down. First there is a cleanup, shutting down the X11, Win32 and ImGui, and then you destroy the HWND window. And some other functions which again I'm not gonna get into because you don't really need them. And the same, if you want to include this in a project, look over the example, you will see exactly how you need to include them. So that's not my focus today anyways. That's about it, and I think we should actually start with the ImGui itself. Before we start anything, before we have a window, before we have any functions, any elements, any UI related stuff, I want to tell you about 3 structures you will come across many times in ImGui. The following structures are ImVec2, standing for ImVector2, ImVec4, which is ImVector4, and ImColor32. ImVector2 is usually used for size or position because if you look at its structure, it takes a float x and a float y value, which are proportional to the x and y axis. When ImVector2 is used as a size, you follow the width being the x and the height being the y. And when it's used as a position, it's simply the coordinates of the x and y axis. And you can access, as an ImVector2, you have the whole size or location, but if you want to access only one of those, so let's say I have an ImVector2 size of 400 by 400, you type it like this, ImVector2 size equals to ImVector2 of 400, 300, and let's say I want to access only one of the values, I'm going to type size.x to access 400, or size.y to access 300. So this is the vector2 with only 2 values, and I'm sure you can guess it already. ImVector4 is the same exact concept, but it has 4 values. So ImVector4 color equals to ImVector4 of, and you can type a color here. Now, why I wanted to show you both ImVector4 and ImColor34 is because there is something very important. ImVector4 is not really RGBA. Even though it has 4 values, you cannot type here 255, 255, 255, 255 because you won't get the color you want. In ImVector4, the color is in float and it ranges between 0 and 1. So your RGBA color here doesn't have the value between 1 and 255. It has the 0 and 255. It has the value between 0 and 1. And you must think right now, how do you get that value? Well, it's pretty easy. You simply divide the RGB value. Let's say I have an R of 230. I simply divide it by 255.0f to make it a float. And this division will give us the exact equivalent of 230, but in ImVector4. This will give us something between 0 and 1, and this way you will have the color you want. If you don't want to use it like this, and you could use ImColor32, which ImColor32, I think it's im_col32, and this takes directly RG, B and A, so no need to divide anything here. If you don't know what A is for, it's for opacity, because it can also be transparent to some degree, and this you can tell it how transparent. So these are ImVector2, ImVector4 and ImColor32. You will stumble across ImVector2 and ImVector4 very many times. So here is the next thing I want to go over, and it's the window creation. Everything in ImGui, every element is placed inside a window. Either if it's the main window or another window, doesn't really matter, it's a window. So a window is made by using ImGui, everything, it's in an ImGui namespace, so ImGui begin. Simply it's named begin, and as an argument it takes a few things, only one of them being necessary. The name, which is the name of the window, and there's one more important thing to keep in mind. So let's say ImGui tutorial, and keep in mind that the name of any element, not just the window, is also its ID. So any element, any window, everything has to have an ID. If you want a window to have no name but still have an ID, you cannot leave it empty. This will not work. You can use hashtag. If you do this, anything you write after it will be considered an ID, but it will not show as text. So keep that in mind. Now I have no problem with it showing as text, so I'm just going to type ImGui tutorial. After you type the begin, which you can also type in an if structure, you could say if ImGui begin if you're more comfortable with having brackets. And after you finish every element in your window, you need to end it by using ImGui end. If you don't end the window you begin, you will have major issues. ImGui will completely bug out. But most of the times it will actually tell you that there is no end to a window which began. Now I told you that the only necessary thing for ImGui begin is the name, but you also have two more things you can add to it. You can add a bold dictating if the window is opened, it's showing or not, and some ImGui window flags which are very important. So let's type through for the p open. Actually, let's make it bold. Let's say here before the main loop, ball opened equals to true, and we put it here, opened. This is not very important, but if you at any point turn open to false, it will not render anymore. And the important thing here are the ImGui window flags. Right now, if I compile the application, and I will, to show you something, you will now have a window, which is the one here. Even though it's empty, it's still created and ended, so it will show. As you can see, it's very small and has virtually no size or no position, but this is our window, and we can see a few elements already, even though we haven't put anything in it. We see the title we gave it, we see that we can collapse it, we can close it from here, we can resize it, and we can move it. So what should you do if you want to get rid of these things? If you want to make it non-collapsible, or if you want to not be able to close it, or if you want to make it not resizable or get rid of the title bar. Well, here is the moment window flags come in handy. What you are going to type here is ImGui window flags, and here you can tell the window to act based on the flags. If you click here and pick at the definition, here you can see all the possible flags, and they are pretty self-explanatory. So if you use the, let's see, no collapse by example, so let's type no collapse, you will no longer be able to collapse the window. So let's build it really quick. And as you can see, I have the window same as before, but I cannot collapse it anymore. Let's say I want to get rid of the resizing function, so I don't want to resize the window. Then we can simply type ImGui window flags no resize. If you want to have more flags at once, you just type this vertical line between them, and you can type again ImGui window flags underscore no resize. Let's compile it again, give it a shot. And as you can see, no collapse working and no resize as well. I cannot resize it. This goes on, you can disable the title bar, you can do all kinds of things. For now, I will leave it be like this. Before we get to the elements, I want to show you how to resize a window and how to set the position of a window. There are two main functions you use for this, and talking about size, the first one is ImGui set next window size, and with this you will set the size of the next window to begin after the function. The next window which begins under this function is this one, the main one, ImGui begin blah blah blah. So it applies to this one, and as I told you before, you are now encountering the ImVector2 size. Here I will tell you something, and I encourage you to do it. Here you can set the size using an ImVector2 of the next window, yeah? So you can set the size to, I don't know, 500 by 500 by example. So width of 500 and height of 500, and this will make it a square, right? Let me show you. So you have now a square. It's a bit not square because of the title bar, which adds to it, but if you remove the title bar, it's a perfect square. This will look this way only on my resolution, which is 1920 by 1080p. And even though it's a popular resolution, if you give the program to someone who has another resolution, a bigger one or a smaller one, this will look different. It will look distorted. So one thing you can do to make it look the same on all computers is, instead of having hard-coded values like 500 by 500 pixels, you could have percentages of the screen's height and width. So you can get the screen width and height by doing, let me show you by example. You can get the width by doing an int variable, let's name it x, equal to, use the function get system metrics and sm underscore cx screen for width, and the same but replacing x with y, cy screen to get the height of your screen. So this way you have now stored in the x and y variables the width and the height of your screen, and by doing, which for me is 920 by 1080, but for others might be different. So if you now, instead of 500, write x divided by 4, which is the width divided by 4, and y divided by 8 by example, and you run it, obviously you can calculate this and make it to your liking, you will see now this window will look the same on all computers because it's not hard-coded anymore to a value. It's now taking a percentage of the screen size. So when the screen size changes, the window size also changes. This applies to everything. Anywhere you want to change the position or the size, it's better to use percentages of the screen resolution or the window size or whatever in order to make it look the same on all computers. It's a good practice, but if you know your program will be used mainly on full HD displays, then you can go without it, I guess. Anyways, we are going to set it 500 by 500 for now because it helps me in this video. Going further, you can also set the position of a window, but there is a thing, there is a catch. If we do set the same, it's almost the same, set next window, but instead of size you say position, also takes an ImVec2 of position, and let's say I wanted 100 pixels from the top, 100 pixels from the left margin and 100 pixels from the top. This is how you calculate the distance, how many pixels from the distance 0, and as you can see it's here, 100 pixels from the top, 100 pixels from left, and it sticks to that if we adjust the size. But one thing is, even though I haven't put the flag no move, I cannot move it anymore. Why is that? Because I told you at the start of the video, everything inside the ImGui while gets executed, not the ImGui while, everything inside the while function gets executed every tick. So this set next window position gets executed many times a second, and basically it sets the position every time to this position and doesn't let you move it. If you want to set that position initially, but after that let the user move it however they want, you can either get this outside of the while or do a ball and say if that ball is true, then execute it and then turn it to false, and it won't execute again. So you need to find a way to make it execute only once. With that being said, I will close it because I like to move it. And we should go further. Now we finally get to the elements of the window, and we have quite a few elements. And we are going to start with the most basic and the most needed element of all applications, which is text. In ImGui, you can type text by simply doing ImGui text. And the single argument you need is the actual text you want to type. So let's say hello to my test application. By doing this, you will now have text. So I'll show you in a second. As you can see, hello to my test application. I will teach you another trick here. You can use, this time not next window pos, because this is not a window. You can use ImGui set cursor pos. And if you want only on one axis, you can do X or Y. If you do X or Y, it will ask you for a float. If you do just pos, it will ask you for an ImVec2. So let's do X. And let's say I want to set a pos of 40. I want to have a padding on the margin, so I don't want to start right at the margin. If we do this, you can see there is now some space between the margin and my text. I will show you a trick on how to center the text, because many times you would like to have the text centered, and I will bring up my old friend Paint for this. If you want to center a text inside the window, let's say this is the window, it's pretty easy to do. You get the window size, and I'll show you how to. There's a function. You get the width of the whole window. You divide it by half to find out the half point of the window. And then you subtract from that only half of the size of the text. By doing this, you will start somewhere around here and end around here, and the text is perfectly centered. Maybe it doesn't make that much sense when I draw it, or maybe I'm stupid at explaining it, but I do sure hope it will make much more sense when actually putting it in code. So if you want to center this text, simply set the cursor position X to ImGui get window width, which will get the width of the window as a value. Divide this by 2 as I told you. You are now currently at the middle of the screen. So the text currently starts rendering in the middle of the window. As you can see, in the middle here, that's where it starts to write. And now we need to subtract from that also half of the size of the text, so it's centered. So we're gonna subtract, and to get the size of the text, we have a function named calculate text size. And if you want to do this for other things, you can use calculate item width. We are going to do ImGui calculate text size, and you just need to paste the same text you are going to use in your text, and make sure you also divide this by 2. And now, obviously, mathematically, it will be centered. Okay. The calculate text size returns an ImVector2, which also has an X and a Y value. But because here we are working with set cursor pos X and the window width, we are going to type after calculate text size dot X to access only the X value in our application. By doing that, we can now compile and we can see that the text is centered. Amazing, right? This is sadly where math comes in handy, and this is very, very basic math, but if you want to start doing professional ImGui designs, you can see we'll stumble across it quite a few times. So I guess stay in school. Anyways, the second most important thing in ImGui after text is a button. You need a button. You always press some buttons in an application, and this is very easy. You will do if ImGui button, and I'll explain how this works in a second. You type as an argument the name you want for the button. If you want the button to have no name, you can just type hashtag to give it an ID. I'll say the name of the button be button, and inside the brackets of the if statement, everything you write here will execute when you press the button. How this works is basically the button, the function that renders the button, is a ball. So it renders the whole button and it returns if the button was pressed. So basically, if the ImGui button ball is true, then this will execute, but no matter what, it will render, even if it's pressed or not. So as easy as it gets, if ImGui button, then you execute what happens when you press that button, whatever code you want. Oh, my throat hurts a little bit from all this speaking. I'm not used to making videos so long. Moving forward. Now we are going to talk about checkboxes, which basically there are some buttons which have two states, enabled or disabled, true or false, and their let's say value will be stored inside a ball. So let's do a ball, name it, I don't know, checkbox, doesn't matter, and let's give it the value false. And then we go here in our program and type ImGui, this time checkbox, because we want a checkbox. It will ask us for a name, which will also be the ID. Let's type my checkbox. And after that, it will ask for the ball we want to change the value of. So I'm typing checkbox. Let's compile this and let me show you what I mean if you didn't understand already. Here is the button, which you can also change its size, and I'll show you that in a second. And here is the checkbox. Currently the ball is set to false, and if I press it, now the ball is set to true. So that's what the checkbox does. Moving forward, if you want, I said I'll explain, if you want to change the size of a button, you can see that after the name, it also takes in an optional argument, which is ImVector2 size. So if you want the button to have a custom size, you can type here ImVector2 100 by 100. And it will now get this size. Obviously, it won't look good being square and all, but I wanted to show you that it's possible. Alright, let's continue. After checkbox, I think it's appropriate to show you sliders. Sliders are exactly what they say they are, some sliders you can use to give values to ints or floats, basically numbers. And I'll show you right now. So let's create two variables to test this. Let's create an int underscore slider for the int slider, and let's set it to a starting value of 10. It doesn't really matter. And a float for the float slider, float underscore slider, and let's give it a value of 10.0f. Let me open my window. Very hot in my room. So we have the int slider and the float slider. Now we go here where we put all our stuff in the ImGui window, and we are going to type the first one, ImGui slider int. You have more styles. I'm just going to use the normal one, slider int, and you see it asks for quite some arguments. We have the label, which is the name of the slider, the name that will appear besides it, and also the ID. We have the int, which is going to modify the variable which holds the value, and then you're going to have a vmin and a vmax that refer to the minimum and maximum value that the slider should be allowed to reach. And I'll show you. So let's give it a slider the int value name. Let's give it our int underscore slider variable we created. And let's say I want it to go from 0 to 100. If I do this, the maximum value will be at 100 and the minimum value will be 0. So we have an int value here. It's 10 because this is how we initialize the value. And if we want, we can do it, we can increase it all the way up to 100. Now the int value inside our application is 100, or decrease it to 0. We can also do that. Obviously, you can change this to whatever number you like, as long as it's not bigger than the int limit. So now we can do it all the way to, don't know much, 10 million, I think. Yeah, 10,345,000. 340. And the same exact thing goes with the float. ImGui slider float. We'll do, again, let's put it a name, float value. Give it the variable float slider, and let's say it's allowed to go from minus 50.0 to 285.0. I'm just saying some numbers. It doesn't really matter, whatever you need inside your project. And as you can see, we now have the float value, which can go up to 285, and the down limit is minus 50, and everything inside. These were the sliders. Amazing thing. And the next thing, which is the last thing regarding elements, actually second to last thing, are the inputs. Inputs are being used to take inputs from the keyboard and transform it into variables. You have input text, input int, input float, etc. So we will use for input int our int slider variable because it's already created, and for text, well, actually I'll show you after. So if you want, you can type ImGui input int. You can have float, double, etc. It will ask you as always for a name, input int, give it whatever name you want. You have the variable, and we are going to use slider int, so I show you one thing as well. Slider. And then you see you have a step. That step, and I'll show you in a second, let's put it 1 and step fast 100. And I'll show you what that step means, step and step fast. The input box, you can type inside it, but you can also use these minus and plus signs to add one or decrease one. And this is where step comes in. Step is the number you subtract or add to your value whenever you press once. I've set it to 1, so each time I press it goes up by 1. And step fast is if I hold down the button, how fast it goes. I'm not sure 100 in what time frame, but you can see they go pretty fast. And you can also see that the value here changes. So if because it's the same variable, if I change the value here in the slider, it changes the value here in the input. Going forward, let me check I'm recording. Okay, I'm recording. 41 minutes already. If you're still watching at this point, you are a real one. And you should subscribe. Going forward, we still have things. So now we have the most important thing. I mean, I said this 3 times before, but still, we have the input text. This lets user input text like a password, like a login, like a whatever. There is a ImGui library which lets you have input texts into strings, but by default in ImGui the input goes in a char. So we're gonna do a char, let's name it buff, of a known size. You can give it a limit like 128, and we don't need to attribute it anything. So char buff of 128 size. And how we use this is doing ImGui input text this time. You can also have input text multi-line or with hint, but I'm just gonna type input text. Name, so let's say, I know, by example, we'll say password, so I can show you something. We'll say password, and we'll put the buff here, the variable, the char we created, and we also need the size of the buff. You can simply use a function like im_array size or size of to get the size of the buff. So im_array size of buff will do the trick. And if you want it to be a password, you need to know that not only Windows have flags. Here the input text also have flags, and if you type something like ImGui input text flags _password, it will make all the characters you type inside the input text with stars. So no matter what you type, they will look like stars when you type them. So that's one of the many things you can do. I'm gonna comment this out for now. I'm very tired at the time of recording this, so maybe there's something small I'm missing. I'm not gonna go into it and check right now. And what I want to show you is that you can also have a color picker, which is built in ImGui. So if you do a float to get the color, let's say float color, and you go here, you can type ImGui color picker. I think you have 3 and 4. Let's use 3. And it takes literally a label and a float and some flags if you want. So I'm just gonna do pick color and then the float, which will be CLR, and you can do ImGui color edit flags. Click on it and you will find more flags here. None, no alpha, no picker, no options, no label. no drag, no border, and so on. If you leave it like this without any flags, it will be normal. Let's start it again. Put something here. All right. So as you can see, you have a color picker now, and you can have RGB values, and also you see the color you pick here. So this is the integrated color picker in ImGui. These are all the elements I will show you for today, and I have one more important thing to show you. You should initialize the float here by 0 though, so it's not minus 2 billion or whatever. Alright, let's stop the debug. One important thing I want to show you is ImGui styles. You can customize your window as you wish. You can change the colors and the styles by doing the following things. So here or wherever you wish, doesn't matter that much, you can do ImGui style, name it style, the variable, equals to ImGui get style. And now you can refer to this style and change things. For once, you can do style dot, and you see you have tons of things here like frame padding, item spacing, colors, blah blah. We'll do something like window rounding by example. So styles.window rounding, this is how much they round at the corners. Let's type something like 20.0f so it's obvious. And as you can see, it's now rounded. The corners are rounded. Depending on the value, they will be more rounded or less rounded. You can do, I know, 90 if you want an exaggerated example. I'm not sure what the limit is. Yeah, so pretty much everything goes bad. I think this is the limit you see here with white. So we are going to leave it at a 20 or a 15 even. Like you have window rounding, you have many more things, so you can explore them on your own. And then also colors, if you want, you can do style.colors, and you can get inside the brackets ImGui col, coming from color, underscore, and now you can see all of them here. There are quite many, and you can change almost everything. By example, let's change the background. So window background equals to, and here comes the ImVector4 I was telling you about. Let's pick a color. It happens. So let's go color picker. And let's pick a nice dark blue. Actually, no, because the elements are dark blue. Let's pick a nice, doesn't really matter, a gray. 31, 31, 31. So ImVector4 is not RGBA, but it goes, like I said, divided. So you can type 31 divided by 255.0f, and so on. 31 divided by 250.0f, 31 divided by 255.0f, and lastly you can type 1.0f directly because you want maximum opacity. We don't want it transparent at all. And as you can see, the background is now gray. You can change things like button backgrounds. Instead here I can type button, I know, hovered. When the button is hovered, it can get that color. So now when I compile, the button looks the same at first, but if I hover it, it goes gray. So with this, you can customize virtually anything in your window. But yeah, I'd say these are all the things you need to start your ImGui journey, because with this you can start creating everything you need. Obviously, I'm not here to teach you coding, I'm here to teach you only the basics of this select library, which in my opinion is an amazing library. I use it on all of my projects, even if it's for testing or for literally drawing the whole application with it. I use it and it is amazing. You can do many things with it, and if you really take the time to learn it, and also go to my channel, check out custom things I made, custom draws, and you can also draw custom shapes if you want, if you get a draw list. And I think if you want to draw custom shapes, you can do draw list, draw underscore list equals to ImGui get draw list, or however it was, something like that. And get window draw list, I think that is it. And after that you can do draw underscore list arrow and literally add whatever you wish. Add rects, add circles. I'm not going to go over them right now because I have videos, most of my videos use draw list to draw custom things, so you can learn about them there. But this was the video. Thank you a lot to Okernaut for creating this awesome library and still maintaining it. It's awesome. All credits to him, obviously. And thank you guys for watching. If you got here, you are amazing. This is the result, let's say, for today. You can also select fonts if you want. You have videos on this here. You can load custom fonts from either TTF files or from memory, and you have videos on my channel on that, so I suggest you check them out. Thank you for watching. Join the Discord server, subscribe, leave a like, maybe join my membership, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for being here.